And I see that our next guest is here in the room with us. We have Hasan Piker, the cousin of the next president of the United States, Cenk Uygur. He's going to be the Hunter Biden of 2024, I have a feeling. And here he is. I see that our next guest is here in the room with us.
Hello.
Now, yeah, hey. It's a little delay on the YouTube, so if you turn that down. President of the United States.
No, nephew.
I'm sorry, nephew. It's going to be the Hunter Biden of 2024, I have a feeling. And here he is. Hey, man. Hasan is telling me to hang on a minute. This is, we're 2 hours in, and this is maybe the first technical difficulty that we've had. The YouTube stream is a few seconds behind the us live, and so he's telling me one second here. But we have Hasan, and we're going to get started with him in just a second.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, perfect.
You're coming in a little hot.
Oh, am I? Am I loud? Sorry.
Yeah, a little bit.
Lowered a little bit. Okay.
Okay, very good. Now, so great. Well, I'm sorry I said cousin. I meant nephew. But doesn't matter. You're going to be like the Billy Carter of the Uygur White House. You're going to be just hanging out, sort of on the side.
I want to be more like the Hunter Biden of the White House.
You do.
Yeah.
Well, you're in California now, so that fits. So that's, he was right down the street from me in Venice for a long time.
Prostitution, crack cocaine. Like, I've gotten a head start on all that.
Is it that different? Right. Is it really, is it, it's not going to change your life to a large degree. Thank you for being here, man. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Sorry for the initial feedback coming out of my microphone. I'm a professional streamer, for those of you who don't know, but I still end up, I've never said I was a good streamer. You know what I mean?
That's right.
Professionally, I do it, but I'm not very good at it. So I end up failing.
Yeah. Fortunately, we get allowances from our audiences who stick with us through good times and bad. But thanks for being here. Look, what has been the big story that you guys been talking about over the last week over there at your stream?
Well, for me in particular, the only thing that we've talked about is obviously the ongoing ethnic cleansing happening in Gaza.
Absolutely.
But beyond that, I do sometimes try to dial it back, because I do think that there's like a lot of outrage fatigue going on as well, even within like leftist circles, where people are just like, all right, well, there's a lot of stuff going on. Can you inform us about other things as well? Like, I sometimes forget that I'm playing a balancing act of, I would never consider myself an activist or anything like that, or an organizer, but like sometimes maybe my own personal opinions and anger for a particular matter causes me to forget that like I am supposed to be a more like all encompassing news network, even though I'm one person.
Well, as I mean, that is the burden, right? I mean, as an independent streamer, where people come to you, lots of people, to get a perspective on the news, do you feel like you have that responsibility sometimes, that you need to broaden it out rather than maybe the thing that you're really amped up about, that you have sort of a responsibility to the audience?
Yeah. No, 100%. I have two different responsibilities. One is like, obviously in my mind, I want to make sure that I can get my points across to as broad an audience as possible, and to hopefully shift their perspective, have them receive what I have to say charitably, and then maybe even eventually change their minds, and then join their local organizations. It could be the DSA, it could be other organizations as well. maybe even consume content from the likes of Prospect, as a matter of fact, and
Hey,
all the people that I have on my broadcast, yourself included,
yeah,
and eventually, like, their media diet changes, their worldview changes a little bit, their worldview shifts, and then they become more politically active. So that's like
yeah.
my major goal. But in that, I
But
do also have I do also have another goal, which is to offer people news analysis and try to teach them critical thinking, media literacy, and over a broad coverage of news, like a big media diet, because I feel like the singular source of news for a lot of people under a certain age group, like in a certain demographic, definitely
yeah,
under 35.
yeah.
So that's a
So
responsibility I think about. Yeah.
yeah, totally. Well, let's talk about that in the context of this war in Gaza, because you mentioned outrage fatigue, and I'm curious about that. I mean, you say that one of your main projects is to get people, sort of engaged and activated, and people are activated about Gaza in a very particular way, but it's a way that is, in another respect, kind of alienating from the broader kind of arena of politics, or at least, you know what I mean? Like it's there's a lot of, I mean, we're here in Los Angeles. They shut down the 110 freeway, but at the same time, it's causing people to say politics is crap, and I'm not getting involved in it at all. So what do you think about that, and how do you talk to your audience about that?
Well, one thing I've always said is that, obviously voting is important, but it's the uh, least significant,
Right.
most important thing you can do.
Right.
Which is why I always push for organizing beyond voting, organizing in the
Hmm.
workplace,
Hmm.
and joining local organizations in general to apply outside pressure to the one party that is supposed to be responsive to the demands of the working class, in which case it's the Democratic Party. Um, and so I mean, I've been a leftist for a very long time, so I'm used to failure. I'm not used to success at all. So it's not like
Right.
I can take it in stride in a way that I do feel like at least my audience and like the younger generation is not used to. Um, what do I mean by this? Like an example I will give is not the Gaza one, but 2020 George Floyd Black Lives Matter protests.
Hmm.
It came in a perfect moment, right? It was a powdered keg. You had lockdowns, tensions were high, everyone was feeling tense, and then
Yeah.
this glaring, obvious police brutality occurs in broad daylight in front of 42 witnesses on their phone cameras, and it becomes this viral moment, and an entire generation basically took to the streets to protest police brutality. And at a time there was a lot of mobilization, and then it was quickly commodified,
Hmm.
and quickly taken over by corporate interests. You had Walmart throwing up the black fist, saying
Yeah.
like Black Lives Matter, and when you think about it, it's like Walmart
I,
is
I
probably pumping millions of dollars into local police funds, right?
I remember Jamie Dimon taking a knee in front of like a bank vault. That's
Yeah,
the part that always that's the
yeah,
enduring image.
yeah. Or Nancy Pelosi wearing the kente cloth, right? Like,
Exactly.
and taking a knee
Exactly.
as well, and all of that was obviously purely aesthetic. The Democratic Party did something really interesting at the time called Eight Can't Wait, which
Yeah.
was basically their already watered down version of the demands that the activists were making on the streets, demands that were quite reasonable, as a matter of fact. And then what did they do? They couldn't pass Eight Can't Wait, which was already watered down and neutered, that they were, working against the outside political entities and outside organizations on. And then on top of that, they couldn't even pass that. But then they also started positioning themselves against some of the messaging that came out of these movements. Now, obviously, the messaging itself is not supposed to be perfect. It's because this is not like focus grouped or anything, and it's just defund the police was the message. And in my opinion, the Democratic Party had the responsibility in that moment to meet the message head on. And if they were actually responsive to the demands being made, if they had like any kind of moral courage whatsoever, or even if they were even if they operated in a similar fashion to the Republicans, where they do listen to their fans and they
Hmm.
do listen
Hmm.
to their constituencies, no matter how radical they might be, they would have worked overtime in utilizing the media to communicate that defund the police didn't actually mean like abolish the police or whatever. And sure, there's people that do feel that way about it, but it doesn't really matter ultimately. Like they had the responsibility in that moment to make sure that that narrative stuck, and then hammer on this narrative instead of communicating against the narrative, saying, no, 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 these guys are radical. These guys are not us, please. Now, I think that this is a major failure of the Democratic Party. I took the long way home of basically describing why I think so many people feel powerless and therefore check out of the political process in its entirety. And this exact same strategy is at the heart of the Democratic Party, where they run away from their base, Republicans run towards their base. That can actually, lead to problems for the Republicans as well, obviously, as we've seen with the abortion stuff, listening to their most radical
So,
constituents.
so do you think? I mean, I'm trying to figure out because I think you're articulating something that is broadly accepted among young leftists, right? I mean that is the perspective, and I think that's why when this situation in Gaza came down, it fed into that very
Yeah,
much,
yeah.
and so is the answer then that because you see the Biden administration saying, "Oh, please, Benjamin, please, Prime Minister Netanyahu, please wrap this up quickly," while we're also feeding arms to the country and whatever.
And he has no interest to
What
do
it
so because he's right wing. He
right,
doesn't even want he demonstrably Benjamin Netanyahu and his administration like Trump more than they like Biden anyway.
right.
They're more ideologically
So,
aligned. Donald Trump gave them everything, and Biden simply just continued along with the Abraham Accords. Sorry, go ahead.
right. I mean, a lot of what we saw here, why this was. I mean, there are those that say that Hamas perpetrated this attack in a calculated way to stop the largest participant in the Abraham Accords from coming on. That would be Saudi Arabia, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, there was this 2 or 3 year period where the Palestinian question was there was an attempt to sort of push that, completely marginalize that, push it to the side in favor of these relationships, mostly in a way to put pressure on Iran. Bring in Saudi Arabia and UAE and those countries in a way that would marginalize, and play up the Sunni Shiite split within the Arab world. So, but I guess my question is that given where we are, what would it take for young people to re-engage with that system again? Or is it in your view, based on who you talk to and you hear, too far gone?
I think it's just you need to do good politics. Democrats,
Hmm.
at least Republicans do good politics. They have horrible policies, but they do good politics, right? Democrats, on the other hand, have are supposed to have good policies, good as in like helpful to the working class and whatnot,
Hmm. Hmm.
and yet oftentimes they end up fighting against themselves. We have the rotating villains, right, in
Right.
the Senate and sometimes even in Congress or in the House of Representatives. But
Right.
then beyond that, they also do horrible politics. What do I mean by this? Democrats can utilize the actual momentum on the ground in the same way that Republicans consistently do, but they fail to do so because they're absolutely terrified by getting pummeled by the Fox News and the media apparatus that is going to align with the most reactionary sentiment every single time. And I think that that is a major failure because I mean, Republicans organize on the boundaries of QAnon, even, right? Like
Right.
these guys will literally look at anything and everything that works, that gets people outside and gets people organizing and mobilizing and go,
Right.
that's it, that's perfect. Something that I noticed early
There's
on.
a question as to whether that's a good thing, though, right? Like
Well, well, the difference
to
is
amp up those voices in the country is also toxic in a sense.
absolutely. However, we're talking about QAnon, which is on the right wing radical side, right? And
Right.
then we're talking about like ceasefire in Gaza,
Which is
which
not
is
in any
not a
way.
radical
Yeah, yeah.
proposition at all.
Exactly.
It's just
Exactly.
is
Okay. I got you.
so so the point I'm saying, yeah, I'm not saying like they should be shining path defenders or like Maoist third
Right.
worldists or anything.
Right.
You know, what I'm
Right.
simply stating is like when you see organizing happening on the ground, when you see momentum from the youth, instead of saying those are our guys actually, and here's what they really mean, right? And taking advantage of that and being like, we hear you, we see you, we are going to do the right thing. We're going to do our very best to do the right thing. Democrats immediately go, "Oh, ew, yuck, that's gross. We don't like that at
Right.
all," because they've made the calculation that the more educated conservative white demographics in suburban areas are they're grossed out by Donald Trump and the extremism of the Republican Party, and those are the guys who vote. Whereas like the younger demographics, black and brown people who are at least like more likely to be poorer, they're not going to go out and
Right.
vote anyway. So who gives a fuck? Like fuck those guys.
There's another thing we see, and actually, before I get to this, I just want to mention we have more donors that have checked in to help support us, and I want to thank them personally. Joseph from Illinois, Brian from Texas, Paul from Pennsylvania, Doug from Philly. I know a Doug in Philly. Maybe it's the same person. Kevin from South Dakota, Julie from Michigan, Lariat from Arkansas, and Florian from Germany. Thank you. Thank you so much. Remember the place to go, prospect.org/telethon. That's where you can donate, help support us as we go through this all-day affair. So, but another way that I see Democratic leaders and their allies go through this, and we're heading into this season right now, where if you say something remotely negative about the Democratic Party from the left, you are immediately censured as someone who is trying to bring forth the next Trump administration. If you criticize the Democratic Party from the center, you don't, or from the right, you don't get the same treatment. I mean,
Yeah.
there is nobody who did more to try to block Build Back Better, which was a set of middle class policies that to help people with healthcare costs, childcare costs, things like that. Nobody did more to try to block that than the Joe Manchin wing of the party. They were not told that they were going to elect Trump in that regard. But anytime you look at the observable reality, for example, Biden trying to put an immigration deal together, which is not going to satiate, but plays to all of the tropes of the right wing, you're told, what are you doing? You're going to ruin it for Joe Biden.
Yeah, I mean, this is a phenomena that has happened since the beginning of at least my interest in politics, in American politics specifically. But I think that's because the Democratic Party is it's right wing. I mean, it's a center right party. It's definitely a center right party from the perspective of like other countries. Obviously, sure,
Right.
there are social policies that they push for that are more progressive than some other countries, maybe even our European counterparts. But overall, when it comes to economic matters, when it comes to economic policy, fiscal policy in general, the Democratic Party is very much a center right party. And it shows, and that's why they have the rotating villain inside of their own structure that is constantly putting additional hurdles. And it's not simply a matter of like, I would say, whipping the party adequately, which you could do more of. Certainly, I feel like Dick Durbin has been a demonstrable failure in general, with respect to like the Senate, and Chuck Schumer is horrible as well. However, I think that their material interests align with the Republican Party because they are beholden to the same corporate benefactors at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I would say, just, and this maybe pushes back just a little bit, is that the party as an entity contains multitudes, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you have the party that contains all of the elements that you're talking about, but it also contains, Lena Khan, who's working at the FTC to try to stop corporate monopolies. Jonathan Cantor at DOJ. They just put out these new merger guidelines today. This gets way into the weeds, and I don't really want to do that right now.
And
but
a great NLRB as well.
A great NLRB that has put forward a mechanism by which elections, if there are violations, unfair labor practices in the union election process, you can automatically recognize those unions as having been formed. There's Rohit Chopra at the CFPB doing a lot of good work. So these things contain multitudes, and often I think they get flattened into this is what the party is. So it's hard for people to articulate that. It's like, there's nuance. It's not the easiest thing in the world to describe.
Absolutely. This is, by the way, what you just described is something that I talk about quite frequently. There's also I would say that there is misinformation almost as far as Biden's agenda so far, and what some of those hurdles have been that have been placed upon Joe Biden. But I think that is again another failure of politics in general, because when you have the Build Back Better agenda being destroyed or dismantled or stopped by the Democratic Party internally, the conversation can never shift to, look, the Republicans are opposing this. The conversation, nobody likes, Americans don't align on anything usually, with the rare exception of they don't like gridlock. If you want to pass something, you got to pass it fast. Trump's tax cuts, pass it fast, doesn't matter.
American Rescue Plan. The American Rescue Plan was like a $1 trillion plus bill.
Exactly.
They passed it in 3 weeks.
As long as you pass it before the month ends, Americans are like, all right, that's fine. They hate when things take a long time. This happened during the ACA. This happened during the ACA negotiations. Obviously, there was some unfortunate circumstances there, but it was
with Ted Kennedy dying and then losing the seat in Massachusetts and all that.
But again, but now we're talking about we have a super majority, and yet even then, the Democrats are willing and able to talk to Republicans to try to get them on board with it, which they never will vote for regardless. And the Democratic Party should know that. If I know that, they should know that. I'm an idiot.
Well, that's that's like with this immigration deal. So, in 2006, there was this comprehensive deal. It wasn't very comprehensive, but it was, there was at least a path to citizenship in it. It got 62 votes in the Senate. Nobody ever talked to the House, and the House were like, we're not doing this, because Republicans controlled the House and they were restrictionists. In 2013, same thing happens. They do this big negotiation in the Senate, get 68 votes. It's a terrible path to citizenship. It takes 13 years to get someone through who's undocumented to be a citizen. And nobody ever talked to the House, and the House is like, we're not doing it. And now this year, the Senate and the White House are having this huge negotiation. There's no path to citizenship. It's purely punitive at the border. It's meant to close the border, essentially, effectively. And no one's talking to the House, and the House is saying, we're not doing it, and we're going home for the year. What are you even doing? This isn't even going to be successful on its own terms in terms of actually passing legislation, and all you're doing is giving the appearance of that you're willing to sell out this particular constituency.
It's bad politics and it's bad policy. Once again, the Democratic Party capitulating to the reactionary white nativist demands being made by the Republican Party on immigration in an effort to fund the ongoing Israeli genocide, which now I believe even Rishi Sunak has called for a permanent ceasefire at this point, as of today, right? That's our number one ally. It's an extension. That's what I saw something along those lines. I didn't see that. I mean, this is literally breaking. I'll take a look at it right now.
All right. We're breaking news here on the telethon. That's why you stay.
Rishi Sunak raises concerns about the Gaza death toll as senior Tories are pushing for a ceasefire. That's what's going on. A group of conservative MPs.
Biden has raised concerns too, over and over and over again, and yet, I don't know that it's changed the trajectory too much.
The prime minister said the UK wanted a sustainable ceasefire with the release of hostages and access for much needed humanitarian aid. So I don't know if there's. I mean, it seems like it
Hmm.
seems like the conversation is shifting, right?
Oh
But
yeah.
regardless, my point is that we are capitulating to the reactionary white nativist demands
Hmm.
on immigration, okay, when this is supposed to be a major difference between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party overall, right? The Democratic Party is supposed to be the party that protects immigrants and is like working hard to
I
open up new
mean,
avenues.
I feel like I'm not sure that you would know that from the last 3 years. That just
Yeah,
I don't know that the case has been made that immigrants help this country and that bringing in people from all backgrounds and all walks of life to come in and help with the workforce and expand prosperity is generally historically a good thing and
yes,
built and how it and that it built America. Like we literally would not have the country we have today without that process taking place. And yet rhetorically, I mean, there are some things that they've been doing around this thing called parole, where they've let certain people from 4 countries, Venezuela, Cuba, and a couple others that I'm not remembering right now, come in every month. This is why we're seeing these shelters fill up in New York and Boston and Chicago, and why these mayors who people like Eric Adams are all mad and saying it's destroying New York City.
mm-hmm.
It's part because of this humanitarian parole thing. And they've given, temporary protected status to Venezuelans so that they can get
Yeah,
work permits and continue. But they don't make the case publicly. They just sort of throw
yeah.
these things out, but there's no case made that, like, this is actually a thing you do to benefit your society.
Yeah, see, that is a major problem. That's precisely what I'm trying to, I guess, arrive at, which is that
Hmm.
Republicans don't simply remember that they have a constituency every 4 years or every 2 years during the midterms. They are actively messaging with Fox News and with many other propaganda outlets to their different constituencies, no matter how radical they might be, and they're working hard throughout the entire year as though they are campaigning to get people on board with their policies, with their agenda. Now, some of those might be massive failures, right? Like the transphobia stuff. It was a major
Hmm.
flub, and they're still pushing for it. And they're still actively messaging around it
It,
as though
it
they
is
think
a,
it's going to.
isn't it amazing how the blind confidence that the right has that this is an electoral winner against all evidence? There's like no evidence that this has helped, and
Yeah,
indeed, there's plenty of evidence that it's hurt a lot in race after race after race across the country.
yeah, but that's a testament to, I think, their willingness to stay on message, because I think they make the mental calculation that maybe 10 years down the line, this messaging will be more, I guess, like this messaging will pay back in dividends when they've been able to successfully make people care about this as though it's a single issue. Because right
Hmm.
now, the thing is, transphobia is not good for the single issue voters. Like in the same way that gun control is, and in the same way that abortion, whether it be restriction to abortion in the past or whether it be allowing access to abortion currently, is a
Hmm.
single issue voter phenomena that will get people out to go out and vote. So I think that they're trying to build that. I think that they're trying to build a base so that there are enough psychotic, anti-LGBT,
Right.
transphobic people. I think it's also another way to try and
Is it
continue
like building
capturing
a
the.
Yeah, it's like building a bench almost. It's
Yeah,
instead of building that bench politically, like through school boards and on the way up, you're building a bench of supporters.
yes,
You know what I mean? Yeah.
yeah, no, that's precisely what I think. I think that
Hmm.
they see that when they lose a major carrot in the form of like Roe v. Wade, because they gave in and they succeeded, and now that's actually negatively polarizing people against the Republican Party because they recognize that this is your fault, right? Now they have to also find something else that's going to motivate the white evangelicals to continue going
Yeah.
out and voting for the Republican Party, because like abortion is now, what are you going to do? You're going to be like, oh, I'm going to punish people that are getting abortions even further. Like you can't really do that. I mean, I guess they are trying, depending on which state you're looking at,
Yeah.
but that's actually an electoral calculation that they have to make that might harm them in the short term, especially. So now they have to look for something else. They have to look for another wedge issue beyond
Hmm.
like gun control, which the Democrats have completely given up on, in my opinion, with like some exceptions, but at the federal level especially. So I think that they're just trying to build a base of support by consistently messaging against trans issues, with the hopes that inevitably they are going to, with the hopes that inevitably they're going to find an actual base of support for such a thing.
All right.
It's terrifying.
I